In this video, we're going to continue our look into intervals. In the last video, we took a look at all of the intervals that occur within a major scale. So the major second, major third, perfect fourth and fifth, and so on. In this video, we're going to take a look at the ones that fall in between those. Now, if you might recall, we used the C major scale last time, and we derived our intervals from that. Well, we're going to stay in the key of C, roughly speaking, for this as well, but we're going to be taking a look at the minor intervals, the diminished intervals, and so on. But before we do, since we're talking about theory, theory is made up of notes on the guitar, and most players don't have a functional grasp of the notes on their guitar well enough to actually understand the theory that they're learning. And that is where this book comes in handy. If you are interested, you could pick up a copy of Make Theory Make Sense on the Guitar, which is a very simple read, not very long, but it consists of 2 primary exercises which will help you to unlock your knowledge of the notes on the guitar so that all the theory we talk about, or the theory that you may learn in other videos and books, will begin to make more sense for you. So by all means, check it out, link in the description, and I hope you enjoy it. The first interval we're going to take a look at today is the minor second. A major second, in comparison, is when you take the first and the second note of the major scale, in this case C and D. That would be a major second. A minor second is where we lower the D to a D flat. Okay, so we have C and D flat. Now the approach we took in the last video, which I'm going to link somewhere up here and in the description, you might recall that we tried to associate every interval with something that it reminded us of. That something could be a song or a melody or something like that, some impression that you get by listening to that interval. When it comes to the minor second, a common one I hear people say is Jaws. If you've ever seen the movie Jaws, you would probably recognize the, right? Very creepy, mysterious, ominous, maybe would be a good word for it. The other thing I like to associate this with is just, you can hear the fact that the notes are not far apart. I mean, even if you close your eyes, you can tell that the notes are very close together. And when you hear them that way, when you hear them in harmony, instead of as a melodic idea, you hear them together, you really hear that rub. So the minor second, I think of it as the Jaws interval, and that'll allow you to identify it no matter what key you're in. Next up, we've got the minor third. Whereas in the previous major scale study, the major third was the happy note, happy interval. The minor third, you can probably guess, darker, maybe a bit sad or melancholy. Now, the association there could be anything. It's the first 2 notes of Led Zeppelin's Heartbreaker. Now, Heartbreaker's not in that key necessarily, but at least not initially. But those first 2 notes spark that song for me, having heard that a million times. It's also the first 2 notes of the minor pentatonic. So if you're used to doing, you know, those sort of licks, bluesy kind of licks, your first 2 notes of shape 1 are the minor third right there. So that would be an association you could use for that. Next up, we had one interval that you could call 2 different things. This next one could either be called an augmented fourth or raised fourth, where the 4th note of the scale normally, F, is raised to F sharp. Or you could also refer to it as the flat 5 or the diminished 5th, where the 5th, G, is lowered to G flat. Now I should probably explain something there. The same notes, C, F sharp, if you want to call it the augmented 4th, or C and G flat, if you want to call it the diminished fifth. The F sharp slash G flat note here, same pitch, they refer to this as what they call enharmonic. And it just simply means it's the same note with two different possible names. Now, if you were playing a mode like, say, C Lydian, you would refer to that as the raised fourth or the augmented fourth. It would be called F sharp. Why? Because there's also a G in that scale. So in normal diatonic scales, you're not allowed to combine, or not allowed to double, I should say, note names. You can't have C, D, E, G flat, G, A, B, C. That note has to be separate from the next note in terms of the alphabet. In other words, an alphabetical order has to be maintained. That's why we have to call this one C, D, E, F sharp, in this case G, A, B, C, so we don't skip any notes in the alphabet. All that to say that when you bring it down to just a single interval, in this case it has two different names and it's not really hugely important which one you want to call it. Sharp 4, flat 5. Either way, it's pretty evil sounding, pretty disturbing. You hear that a lot in more extreme metal. Even maybe some Jimi Hendrix from time to time. He threw in that interval in Purple Haze, I believe. Black Sabbath, Slayer, you get the idea. Next up, we would have the minor sixth. The regular sixth has a very, I would say, kind of a, not unpleasant, it's a cheery sound. But it doesn't sound like anything in particular to me. When I hear the minor sixth, in this case C to A flat, it's a bit darker for sure. And like the other sixth, the major sixth, to me it feels like that note wants to go somewhere. It doesn't sound resolved in and of itself. I hear it wanting to go down to the fifth. To me, my ear pulls that note down to the fifth, which is a nice resolving interval. A fifth is used in a lot of things, major chords, minor chords. So the minor sixth is very tense to me, especially when you play it like harmonically. If you're old enough, you might remember the Dawkins song, Dream Warriors. I probably messed that up. In fact, I'm pretty sure I did. There it is. Again, the Dawkins song is not in the key of C, but because we're in the key of C, I don't want to pull your ear to a different key and make this all confusing. So there's the minor sixth. Last up, we've got the minor 7. Now, this one's an oddball. To me, this one also wants to resolve to something other than what it currently is. If I were to ask you where you hear that high note going, do you hear that high note going lower or going higher to resolve or feel like it's landed? To me, it sounds like it wants to jump up a whole step and resolve to the octave. That has a nice resolution. There are some riffs, however, that have that. Actually, I can think of one. Alice in Chains' Man in the Box. But you would hear them together. In this case, it would be in the key of E normally, and the flat 7 would be D. And he would play those two notes together. Right? To get that kind of dark, disturbing sounding riff. But in the key of C, B flat will be your flat 7. And again, to me, I identify that if it's played, I identify that by the note wanting to move up to there where it feels resolved. It is a pretty bluesy note though as well. it is the fifth note of the minor pentatonic scale too. And that takes care of all of the in-between intervals that we didn't discuss in the major scale version. But again, I would approach it the same way we did in that video, where to get a really good grasp of it, you want to really have these become internal. Meaning, if you sing them, right? Jaws, minor second, minor third, singing them will help internalize them. It'll go beyond just remembering where to put your fingers on the guitar to make these intervals happen. If you know them by just singing them, then you really know them away from the guitar. In other words, you're going to be able to identify these intervals just by listening. You might be walking down the street listening to a song, and you're going to hear an interval, and if you've practiced identifying them by singing, you're more likely to actually know what that interval is without the guitar anywhere near you, which is awesome when that happens, by the way. So minor second is the Jaws. Minor third, to me, is kind of bluesy. Again, heartbreaker. Right? Then we had the diminished fifth, or the augmented fourth, depending on the situation. But again, very dark, very evil. If I do this long enough, someone's going to yell Slayer, so I'll just leave it at that. And then you get the minor sixth. This is the one where it reminds me of a Dawkins song, Dream Warriors. But in and of itself, just on its own, it really wants to resolve. To me, it really wants to resolve to the 5, 1 and 5. So there's tension there. It's definitely, you would hear that a lot in suspenseful movies or scenes in a show or whatever. And finally, we had the minor 7, which there's some grit. If you play them together, you're going to hear that interval in diminished seventh, no, sorry, not diminished seventh, dominant seventh chords, or minor 7. But on its own, in isolation, the minor 7 is kind of a bluesy and wants to resolve upward in this case to the octave, which you can't get a better pairing than the octave. It's just a low C and a high C. So there you go. Check that out. By all means, take a look at the first video, which again is linked if you want a refresher on the major scale intervals. And for the most part, these will guide you quite well into being able to identify them by ear, which is going to be sort of like a superpower later on, as you're going to see in this series as we continue with it. And I would definitely check out that book that I mentioned earlier, because what you're going to learn in that book is going to help you unlock the meaning of all this stuff and actually get you to be able to play these ideas and identify them on the fretboard in any key, which is really the musical freedom you're kind of looking for. So check this out and definitely let me know what you think in the comments. I would love to hear your experience about your process in learning the intervals, and I will catch you in the next one. So by all means, check it out. Link in the description, and I hope you enjoy it.